Hello, this is RV Vagabond Jerry, and today I'm going to drive through Arches National Park, which is just about a few miles north of Moab, Utah. This has always been one of my favorite parks. It's one of the most amazing places in Utah. So I'm going to drive my scooter up the park and give you my version of the tour of Arches. Come on along. And I think it's a pretty dramatic scene from the visitor center going up into the park on this very steep drive. So I'm going to put on my shoulder cam and video that part for you. This series of rocks is called Park Avenue, and I assume that's because it kind of looks like the big hotels and high-rise buildings, Park Avenue, New York City. And right across here is a really interestingly shaped pair of rocks. And next to that is a huge one. Well, looks like I guessed right. This tells how they named it, and you can read that. And a little further down Park Avenue, I'm going to show you some more off to the left here. What a sight is that? And you can hike about as far down there as you like. Way over to there if you want, I guess. Here's a really broad overlook point a little further down the road. And I'll focus in on some of the more distinct features, especially way up on the horizon. There's a huge one over here and there. Some interesting ones over here. This shows how arches are formed. And the baby arch says right there. It's kind of hard to see, but it is right there. And this we call sheeprock. This looks like a sheep head. I'm sure you've heard of petrified trees, but have you ever heard of petrified sand dunes? That's what these are. And this explains it. Interesting that sand dunes can turn into rock. I thought this to be an interesting site with that monument, tall, thin monument there. And look at this one far in the distance. Arches has always been my favorite park in Utah. I first came here in about 1974 on vacation when I was living in Houston, and I just fell in love with the amazement that Utah has. And I have kind of an interesting personal story about this rock structure right there. When I first saw it in 1974, there was a balanced rock mounted right on that base that went up to about that point at the top of the screen. And then when I came back in 1978, it was gone. The balanced rock had crashed. That kind of stunned me. And I moved to Salt Lake City, Utah from Houston, Texas in January 1978. And lived in Salt Lake for 15 years. And during those 15 years, I saw just about everything there was to see in Utah. And I came here actually mostly for the skiing. I loved to go skiing back then. I used to just do it when I was on vacation, and I moved to Utah so that I could ski every weekend. Here's a more close-up of what was the double balanced rock. And the one that was sitting right there is now bits and pieces right there. And this one looks like it has a pretty delicate support right there, and looks like it could tumble over as well. And there's another balanced rock up here. Here's some people hiking the trails. This is called the Garden of Eden. Don't quite know how they came up with that name. Does not remind me of the Garden of Eden. If you've got the energy, they've got the hiking trails. Now this is a triple arch. The big one in front, the one in back there, and there's one on top. It's kind of hard to tell with the other rocks behind it. And there's another arch, or actually you might call it a window. Here's a view where you can see sky behind them. Here's two more arches. And by the way, there are about 90 arches in the park. Now this is the most well-known arch in the park. And what's so amazing is that it is standing alone like that. No support from either side. And I think they call it delicate because it looks like that's what it is. Like a wind could blow it over. And I can zoom in on it here. Can't get a good view from this point. Well, I hiked up a pretty steep trail to a designated overlook point here to get a better view of Delicate Arch.
Hey buddy, listen.
But still can't get a really good view of it. Now there is a separate trail that goes right up to it, where all those people have gone. You can't get to it from where I am, but there's a separate trail that goes up to it, and it's about a 3-mile long trail and rises about 500 feet elevation. And I have been up there before. It's a really good view from there. But I've now hiked up even further, and I can get a much better view from here. The best view of the Delicate Arch is from the other side of it, behind it, where those people are. Some of the structures off to the right of it there. Nice. Another point of interest they have here is called the Fiery Furnace. And this explains what it's about. Here's some more info, and it's not about being hot, although it is in the summer. It's more about the glow of the rocks from the evening sun. And there is also an interesting skyline over here. On the very crest of the mountain there. Interesting how some of them have white tops like that. You can see the layers of different rock types. Nice. Here's a trail to two more arches. And one of them is way over there. Here's a little better view of it. And here's what it looks like off to the right, with these really huge slats of rocks. And in between two of these slats, you might call them, is the trail to Sand Dune Arch, right in there. The arch is not too far in here. There it is right there. It's just a little ways down between these two really tall slats of rocks. So you can see about how tall it is. About 4 times the height of a man. And what I think is even more amazing is that this sand here is finer they've sand than I've seen at a really nice beach. And it's not like dirt, it's actually like fine sand. How about that? And here's another one. It's called Skyline Arch. This is the last point of interest in the park as far as the paved road goes. And look at all these cars. This is a major point of interest. It's called the Devil's Garden. So this is the hiking trail, and if you hike the entire distance, 7.2 miles, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different arches you'll see. And this one is 8/10 of a mile from the parking lot here, and Double O Arch is 2 miles. And because of this rule, I am not going to be hiking this whole thing today. I have in previous years hiked the entire thing. I've seen it all. So if you get here, you got time, I'm sure you're going to want to do it. So I'll leave the rest of this up to you to explore someday if you ever get to Arches National Park. I left my motorhome at the bottom at the visitor center and did all this exploring around with my motor scooter, and I highly recommend that you do the same if you come here. Drive through the park in some kind of motorbike or a bicycle if you're really big into bicycling, because every one of these stopping points I went to, all the parking slots were full, and there was a line of people waiting to get an open parking slot. So if you don't want to deal with that, then get a motorbike or something. So I hope you've enjoyed my tour of Arches National Park. Good day, folks.